It is 10 a.m. in Florida's Big Bend region, where Hurricane Idalia made landfall this morning. It's leaving heavy rains, damaging winds, and a potentially life-threatening storm surge in its wake. Cristian Benavides is in Crystal River with a first-hand look at the storm's impact. How are things going there, Cristian?
Emery, good morning. Well, look, I should address the alarms sort of going off around us. What happens is we'll get these gusts of wind that come through, and then they'll sort of knock out the power maybe for a little bit, but they'll also do this, and there's an alarm that sort of just continues to blare for quite some time. I think it's been going off for like 10 minutes ever since that gust of wind came through. We're also seeing that the river behind me has been growing over the past hour. So I would say maybe last hour it was about 3 feet that it had grown. Maybe now it's 4 feet. What the projected storm surge for this area, according to the National Weather Service, is about 7 to 12 feet. For perspective, the building that we're in is about 10 feet from sea level, but there are homes around here that are at sea level, and so that's why officials were so concerned and are still concerned. In fact, as you mentioned during the last time that we spoke, they're saying, hey, listen, just because it doesn't look like a hurricane outside, that does not mean that we are out of any danger. In fact, that's when you have to be most on alert, right? Because you don't want to drive through a flooded street. You don't want to be out there in the immediate aftermath of the hurricane. You want to sort of wait it out and then assess what the situation around you sort of looks like. So here in Crystal River, that was sort of the primary concern. Another thing to keep in mind is that as the hurricane sort of rolls through, you got to think of all that power right behind the hurricane, and that's where the storm surge really comes in. Once it passes through, really once the eye makes landfall, but even more than that, the water from the Gulf can really sort of sneak up on communities, and so that's why there have been all these warnings, and officials have been telling people all along the west coast of Florida to be prepared. That's because you don't ever really know. You can sort of forecast at the very last moment, okay, this is where this is going to make landfall, but in the days prior and even like 12 hours beforehand, you don't have an exact idea of where this is going to make landfall. And so all the communities around that area really should prepare for situations like the one that we're in here, because you see the river coming up, and so you don't want to be out driving in that because you don't expect this to get any better anytime soon. And that's what officials here have been warning about, you should remain hunker down and make sure that you're in a safe spot until we can get past all of this. And as I mentioned, from time to time we'll get those gusts of wind that are still coming, and we're watching, the river as it continues to grow. What is it going to do? We'll wait and see.
Well, and I think the reason these city officials want people to hunker down is the visual behind you, which has been remarkable to watch how much that water has come up. Because if you leave your house, you go to the store, you run somewhere, there's no water on the road, but then you turn around to try to get back to your home, and now it is suddenly flooded, you are in a very dangerous situation. So I think, the pictures are really telling the story this morning, and it's just going to continue, as you said, to rise.
On top of that, you got to think that you've got, this is Florida. Essentially, parts of Florida are swampland. So what do you have out there? You've got alligators, you've got snakes, you've got things that you don't want to run into while you're out there. So you really got to be careful out there. Not to mention that, down power lines and what that could do. And, we've been saying this, or I've been saying this, that, you can sort of bring the power back after it's gone. The crews are there on standby, but you can't bring lives back after the storm surge. So that's why people should just sort of remain at home. That's what officials are saying for now, and we'll see we'll see what happens in the following hours. As I mentioned, all we're seeing now is sort of gusts of wind, and we'll see if the river continues to grow, we'll see more flooding around this area.
All right. Cristian Benavides, thanks so much. Residents in Georgia are bracing for Hurricane Idalia's impact. The storm is expected to strike most of the southern part of the state. The American Red Cross is on the ground there, ready to assist residents with truckloads of supplies. And joining us now from Atlanta is Evan Peterson. He's a spokesperson for the American Red Cross. Evan, thank you for being with us. You know, we've been talking all morning about so many of these incidents that you as an organization have had to respond to. How are preparations in Georgia going as residents brace for the landfall there? What do you have in place? Are you ready to go?
We are absolutely ready to go. And I often tell people this is that we are a national organization. So on average, we respond to about 60,000 disasters a year, big and small. So we've seen this forecasted for a while now. We know that it's coming our way. We have a rough idea of the trajectory of this storm. So the message we've been putting in place, whether it be in Florida, Georgia, or the Carolinas, if you have time, now is the chance to prepare. Make sure you have a kit, an evacuation kit ready. Make sure you have an evacuation plan ready in case emergency officials are telling you you need to go. And then obviously making sure you have a plan to stay in communication with those emergency officials. Your typical means of communicating, your phones, your computers, your televisions, those may not be accessible when you're evacuating. So making sure you've got portable radios with you, things like that. That has been our message to make sure everyone is ready for when this thing actually comes overhead.
I think it's a really good reminder, and we saw this after Ian, that, you know, we were really focused on Florida and the impact on Florida, but then it goes clear across Florida. And as it's rotating, there's a different type of storm surge that hits Georgia. There's river flooding, tornadoes, there are all sorts of other risks. So what resources does the Red Cross provide for those in the path of a major hurricane?
So what we've really been doing right now is making sure we have our evacuation shelters up and running. We have 17 shelters open across the whole area where this thing is tracking. We're prepared to open more, 16 of which are in Florida proper. One of them is open in Georgia here, so in the Savannah, Valdosta area. But again, we've been in constant communication with our emergency responders, with our emergency management folks on the ground, as well as residents, so that if requests change and the needs change, we're able to pivot and respond. But the types of items we're going to be giving people is first that evacuation center. If people need a safe place to ride out the storm, these are places that are going to have power. They're going to have a stable roof over your head and a safe place for you to hunker down. If those need to change and become more long-term options, we are certainly open to working with our community partners to make that happen. But we just want to provide a safe space in the meantime for people to ride this out.
Well, you provide so many services. You know, I think about not just shelter right now, that you get toiletries together when people can't get through to those. You have people come donate blood. I mean, the Red Cross does so much. You also have to work with state and local officials. How is that relationship going? And how is the assistance there?
We're really fortunate that we stay in constant communication year around with our emergency management counterparts, so that when these requests pop up, again, whether it's a major storm, major hurricane like the one coming now, or again, maybe it's a large apartment fire, we are always working alongside them. So we have good relationships when these big asks come. Hey, we need you to open up a shelter. Hey, we need more emergency supplies, or we need cots to have people lay down on for an overnight stay. We are able to do that. And we've pre-positioned hundreds, thousands of resources all across these tracked areas. Just in Georgia alone, for instance, we have more than 100 volunteers mobilized who left the safety of their home to go man a shelter, to go drive supplies down to the Valdosta, Savannah area. And we have many more on standby, and even some working virtually to assist, providing emotional and spiritual care. We know this is coming. For those who are not having this overhead yet, you still have a couple hours to prepare, and we strongly encourage you to do so.
You know, Evan, one of the things that we were talking about earlier is the increased demand on these support systems, like FEMA preparing for the future extreme weather events. But where, you guys fit in where FEMA can't get to, right? In all kinds of different scenarios. And I'm wondering if that's something that the Red Cross has talked about future extreme weather events, and whether there will be increased demand for your assistance.
You're absolutely right. We have a really great partnership with FEMA. We work alongside them again all year around. But you're right. We are looking down the line in terms of our forecasting here, and we see that climate crisis is a real thing, and extreme weather is making these storms that come our way more intense. So we are preparing for that as best we can. At the beginning of this week, we just announced our big initiative where we are recognizing that this climate crisis is happening, and these weather events that we're seeing are becoming more sporadic. They're becoming more intense, and that is putting an increased demand on our volunteers. So we are always looking for more volunteers for events like this. For instance, when we send a bunch of people down to Florida or southern Georgia, we need other people to come and backfill those spots for the home fires that are happening, say, in our area. We need an increased demand for blood. We know that events like this have already canceled blood drives in our area. So we are asking people, if you have an appointment already, please keep your appointment if you are in an unaffected area. If you haven't made an appointment and you're in an unaffected area, please roll up your sleeve, give blood. It takes about 3 days to process that blood before it can go someplace to a patient in need. So we are aware of this forecasting. We are aware that the climate is changing and it's getting more intense. So wow, we are doing our best to prepare, and we appreciate all those people who are supporting our mission to make this happen.
All right. Well, Evan Peterson, I know a lot of people are appreciating the work that you are doing. Thank you so much.